to me, that song is kind of a song to my daughter and the kind of fear of the world that she's going to inherit, because we're definitely not turning things around. I mean, it's definitely a scary thing coming, and like I said, we shot a video for this that Dre and I directed that we should have up pretty soon for Summer of Rage. We're still kind of editing it now, but it's like the culture of the world, it's scary. People sit their kids in front of the TV or are babysat by these little mind control boxes, and the government's preparing for World War, mass genocide, and they're with these H1N1 vaccinations are in every mall and every airport, and it's like all this stuff is just building into this massive shadow that kind of looms over everything, and so Summer of Rage, and the title was taken from a lot of the there was a lot of riots going on last summer when the economy fell and different people were dying and all these different countries over this economic collapse. They were saying, should America prepare for a Summer of Rage like these other people have had? And it really frightened me. And during the process, I tried to bring a lot of writing this record. I tried to bring a lot of those emotions to the top, and Summer of Rage is a perfect example of that.
Well, Shooter, that's why I think it's so important that most people get married and have children, because it's biological and it's also spiritual at the same time. You become a less worldly person. You become more focused. You understand that even if you've been worldly previously, which all of us have been to a certain extent, and selfish, that you really are tied into the larger human experience. When you have children, it starts something biological in you where you do want to make a better world, because you realize...
Very true. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm just saying
no, go ahead.
True. It's very true. I know people, it's funny, just the people that I know who have had children. I was having this conversation the other day. It's just, there's something that happens in you, and it changes everything. And to me, those are the people on this planet that are going to be the only people on this planet, I feel, that are really going to have their head straight for a positive future are the people that have experienced that, having children. I mean, I'm not to say that there aren't people who don't have children that won't have this kind of positive influence on the world, but I really think it is a giant impact. I mean, for me, I was the same way. You couldn't have said it better, being worldly and being selfish, and you make... There's almost a certain responsibility to yourself that you don't have until you have a child, and it's... With me, with my music, with her, a lot of the inspiration too for this record was me feeling like I had to be putting a message forward that she's going to be able to look back on and study or just learn from. And I had to be responsible. It's all fun doing songs about getting drunk and partying, but at the end of the day, that's not what the human experience is about. That's just things that deter the human experience. And it really, for me, it was, this whole record was kind of that emotion of trying to better the world through her.
Let's talk a little bit about Stephen King, and coming up later in the hour, we have a really long segment. We'll have plenty of time, but talking to you, I guess Stephen King's a fan of Shooter Jennings, and he wrote about you or used a character named Shooter Jennings in your book. Then you reached out to him, or how did you end up having Stephen King do spoken word intros to your album?
Well, he had written some really nice things about my music in his columns in Entertainment Weekly, and I was always completely flattered. And then he wrote this book called Lifey's Story, which took place in Nashville, and my name is in it, but it's just in passing. Like, it was like a moment where this girl was in a car and she was upset, and it wasn't the time for Shooter Jennings on the radio, basically, is what it said. And so I knew that I was on his radar, and when I was kind of creating this record, I had always wanted the record really be about this talk radio guy, and I just had my mind set on trying to reach out to him, and I did finally via email, and like we were saying, I've still never spoken to him or met him. It was all an email interaction, but I wrote him and said, I've got this album, and I know you're probably busy. Well, he wrote me back, and he was like so nice. So gracious, so nice, but he said he was busy, he had a lot of things going on, he was afraid he might not be able to come through, but if I wasn't too discouraged to send him the record and the ideas, and I did, and we just kept emailing back and forth over the period of a couple months, and he was just so generous and cool and gracious and like, you know, just everything that you would. I mean, he just was just an unbelievable human being. And so here I was with Stephen King on the hook, and I'm like, oh, man, now I felt like an idiot because I'd gotten him, you know, gotten his ear, and I was like, I better deliver with this. So I finally sent him some tracks, and then after a while, like, I could tell he was really into it, but he didn't, I don't think I was doing a good job of kind of showing him exactly what I meant by the role, and so I wrote this kind of draft script, which I sent to him, and, man, like, you know, a month later on my doorstep, I had this package that had a CD with a picture of him in the studio doing the tracks on the CD and the transcript that he had adjusted and added a bunch of great stuff, and he came up with the ending for the whole thing, and it was really just a real magical thing, and I owe him a lot because it was such a gracious, you know, use of his time for silly old me kind of thing, you know?
Absolutely. We're going to go out here. We're going to come back and talk more about your interactions with Stephen King and where his mindset is and how you guys came up with this particular talk radio character. But next, we're going to go out with The Illuminated, just a small clip of that, and then come back with more Stephen King, When the Radio Goes Dead. So stay with us, ladies and gentlemen. Shooter Jennings premiering much of his new album here today, Black Ribbons. And this song then really builds up. Just all of it so beautiful. That's When the Radio Goes Dead. It's a 6-minute track. We're going to come back and play some full songs in the next long segment. We're going to go out here in just a moment with All of This Could Have Been Yours. And we're just playing small clips of this throughout the week. I'm going to play some of these songs in their entirety here for the radio listenership because Shooter's been gracious enough to let us do that. But Shooter, when we come back in the next segment, we'll have more time, but a little bit now. I mean, this is really almost an apocalyptic album, and you're going through this story of this talk show host saying it's his last broadcast. I mean, is this off in the future after the New World Order's come into power?
I think that the place that I imagined when I created this kind of idea for this world was a place where that it was just the very beginning of that. You know, a place where there was a spot in there that we had that I took out, and I'll explain to you why. There was something that he said where he said that there was basically a martial law and there were curfews in place. And the reason I took that out is because I thought if this was in the future and this was the scenario, everyone in the world would know there were curfews, so he wouldn't have to say it. It would be like exposition. But the thing is I kind of imagined this place where it was like a modern American city that had now become a kind of populated by soldiers, and there were like curfews in place because of possible